Hello and welcome to the Jazz Jam Podcast. I'm your host, Dwayne Gunnels, joined by my co-host, Max Levy. And on today's episode, we're going to be getting into an album that's kind of near and dear to our hearts at this point after getting to talk to Braxton Cook a few episodes ago. Hopefully you went and checked that one out. We're getting to do his album, Who Are You When No One Is Watching? A really cool album, a really cool insight into his life and his experiences, through the time when he was writing the album. So I'm super excited to get into this one. It's definitely different than anything else we've done on the podcast up to this point. So yeah, a super cool album, super excited to get into it. But before we get into it, we're going to go through, our introduction stuff that we've got to do. Max, how are you doing this week? Anything new or different in your life?
I'm sitting here with my Arnold Palmer and my ice water, and I'm just living life. It's great to be able to do this with you. Like you said, we had some fun getting to interview the one and only Braxton Cook. If you really haven't checked that out, it's worth your time. He gives so many great examples of what to do as a musician, the process, the composing process, the performance aspect, and what his thoughts are with this album. And we're going to get into some of that. And there's a lot to explore with Braxton's musicianship on this record and his intentions, and we get to see who the man Braxton Cook is in addition to the great saxophonist and musician that he is.
Yeah, Max, I think that's a great way to put it, and we'll definitely get into some of the themes on the album as we go through it. Let's get into our Jazz Jam Recommends section, which we've started doing, is we're going to do it on every podcast. Max, I think you have a recommendation. I did the one on the last episode, so I think it's your turn to recommend something. So what do you recommend to our listeners this week?
For this episode's Jazz Jam Recommends, I am recommending the short series, 3-episode series on Amazon Prime Video called Zero Gravity. Zero Gravity goes over the career of the great Wayne Shorter. And it spans, from the beginning of his playing to towards the end, 3 episodes. And the first 2 are really, really good and really full of information and experiences and stories. And you have other musicians talking about Wayne Shorter, and you get a lot of great cameo appearances from other musicians. And it's just a great snapshot of who Wayne Shorter was. He was kind of playful and somewhat childish just in his attitude. And that sort of helped him with his compositions and with his playing. There was always that element to his music. And so you get a glimpse into who the person was in addition to the musician Wayne Shorter. So I recommend Zero Gravity, and that can be found on Amazon Prime.
Yeah, that's a great recommendation. I haven't seen it, and I looked it up, and it got really, really good reviews. So I'm definitely going to have to check it out. And that's what we like to do. We like to learn more about the history. That's part of our main reason for doing this podcast is we thought it's really important that people start to understand kind of where albums come from, as well as, kind of dive into the music itself. So yeah, I'm super excited to check that out.
Yeah, the only thing I would say is the first 2 episodes are really great. The third one drags a little bit. It sort of starts to rehash a lot of the main points that were already made in the first 2 episodes. But either way, all in all, it's a great series. You got to check it out.
Cool. Awesome. Yeah, I'll definitely check that out. That was Zero Gravity is the name of it. Cool.
Yep.
And then Max, I think Max has some housekeeping he wants to do from past episodes. Max, what do you have for us?
Well, I was looking at our numbers, and I noticed that the 3rd most listened to episode lately has been our episode on Oscar Peterson's Night Train, which we did probably a year ago. But people are listening to it, and I made a huge blunder when I was talking about the tune Georgia on My Mind, which is a track on that album. I said it was in a minor key. What I was doing, I was reading through my notes, and I was thinking about something else that I was going to say, and it came out horribly wrong. And I need to fix my credibility on this, because people are going to go and listen, and they're going to say, Georgia on My Mind, that's not in a minor key. So the truth is, Georgia on My Mind is in a major key. If you're an instrumentalist, you usually play it in the key of F major. But the bridge on the tune goes to the relative minor key. So if you're in F, you're going to D minor. So that's what I was trying to say, and I just completely blew it. And I just want that on the record for my credibility.
And I want to say that Max has brought this up multiple times to me. He's been like, I mess that up. I'm like, Max, everyone makes mistakes. No one's going to get too mad. But Max is like, I gotta say it at some point. So this is Max's opportunity to come clean. And we're going to make mistakes. We're going to say things that we didn't mean or that we didn't, like things that are just wrong sometimes. And Max is, coming clean on the record to that one.
I haven't forgotten. It's been a year and some change. It's still lodged in my brain.
Yeah, and then I have one. When we were doing the album Groovin' with Jug, I had mentioned a tune, but I couldn't remember the name of the song. It was from a Jimmy Smith record. I actually have the record. The record is Softly as a Summer Breeze, and there's some confusion with the title of a tune, and it gets titled differently on different versions of the album. And it is named Ode to Philly Joe, but was originally Horace Silver's Home Cookin', and that's what's on the album that I have. It says Home Cookin', but then now on Spotify it's credited as Ode to Philly Joe. So I'd said that in Groovin' with Jug, but I couldn't remember the names of the tunes. So those are the names of the tunes.
Yeah, and that was in reference to a tune on that record called Good Vibrations, which is really known as the Happy Blues. And so that was a connection we were trying to make, but we couldn't remember the names of the songs.
It's really hard when you're like the mic is on and it's hot and you're like, oh man, everything goes blank sometimes, and you're like, I just can't remember anything right now. So
that can happen.
We've all been there. We've all had those brain farts, but cool. Those are our housekeeping, some corrections. Luckily, it's not a long list. Just a couple of things that we've noticed that we want to go back and fill everyone in on. Max, why don't we get into kind of the history of this album and the personnel of who are you when no one is watching?
Yeah, this record from Braxton was released on February 24th, 2023, under the exclusive licensing of Network Music Group Incorporated. And we dealt with them a little bit when we were able to get Braxton Cook on the Jazz Jam when we interviewed him. And they seemed like a nice group of people. They were easy to work with, and it seems like Braxton Cook has found sort of a home that's good for him and for his music. This album was also included in BET's, quote, most anticipated albums of 2023. That's a big doing. And then from bandcamp.com, I wanted to relay a quote that I thought was perfect. This says, "This body of work is a strong statement reflective of Braxton's life experience and inspirations." I think that's spot on. And generally, Braxton's sound sort of seamlessly blends elements of jazz, soul, alternative R&B, and effectively works to make him create his own approach and concept, giving way to his musical expressiveness. And I think he's just really expressive, and there's a varying degree of influences, and he utilizes all sorts of things on this record, including his vocals, not only his saxophone playing, his leadership roles. There's some collaborative elements here, and so we get that with this album. And because of that, we get Braxton Cook, like I said, on the vocals and saxophone. But we got a great rhythm section too. Guitarist Andrew Renfro, also pianist Paul Cornish, who's excellent. We discussed him a little bit when we went over Joshua Redman's NPR Tiny Desk concert on our YouTube. So feel free to check out that reaction. We also have the electric bass player, I think it's Hinnock Montes, Montes, and then Joshua Crumbly on the acoustic bass, Jonathan Pinson and Curtis Noasad on drums, Masego, Orlando Watson, and I think Marquise Hill on vocals. And we, of course, get the great trumpet player Marquise Hill on track 8 as a special guest.
Yeah, and we really get a lot of Andrew Renfro, the guitarist, featured on this album. And it seems to me that Andrew is like a really close friend of Braxton. They've been working together for a long time. And Andrew just actually put out an album. I think it's called Aberdeen Blues. He just put his own album out recently. So if you're looking for more stuff to listen to, I listened to it once and it was good. And if you like his playing on this album, definitely go check that one out. So just a really, really good cast, and it's going to be reflected in the tunes that we get on this album. How about we start out with the first track, Max?
Yeah, we're starting off hot and impactful with the tune MB in parentheses for Micaiah Bryant. It's credited to multiple cast members on the album, not just Braxton. So we get that collaborative thing right away. And we start right on the head with this tune, with the alto sax having the lead with the melody, also doubled by the guitar. And it's accompanied with a steady drum beat with interesting cymbals and a driving snare drum. We get an AAB form with two 8-bar A sections, and that 8-bar B section, which has Braxton sort of meandering around right before the first solo starts at the 1 minute mark. I love the repetitive bass line that's easily heard in the beginning of the saxophone solo. The alto solo has a lot of great phrasing, nice use of space during the first half of the solo, and there are hints of siren sounds that are used sparingly during the middle of the solo. Before elements of the B section theme is used at the tail end of the solo. And that's sort of reflective of the title of the tune, called MB for Micaiah Bryant. Unfortunately, Micaiah Bryant was tragically killed in an altercation with the Columbus police. And so that's sort of what this tune is being influenced by and is reflecting. So we get those siren sounds, those police sounds here. I want us to take a listen to this moment of great development, as there is a sense of momentum building as well during this solo.
Space.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love the break, the kind of rhythm section laying out at the beginning of that part of the solo. I think that's a really cool aspect there.
That's right, and that's what I'm getting at with that momentum building. It's sort of building an intensity as it goes on, and you're right, great uses of space, and he's sort of taking his time with his ideas in a way that's impactful and musically interesting. And it just sets up everything after it too. We get a guitar solo next after that, and the guitarist uses a distinct, slightly edgy tone that fits the tone of the song quite well. Nice use of repetition of shorter rhythmic ideas mixed in with longer, intricate lines too. And he uses chromaticism and thematic development along with a diversity of rhythms and feels as the tune gets more intense. So we just keep building on this tune. It grows and grows. And then we get the head back in immediately after that guitar solo. I would have enjoyed maybe some back and forth between the sax and guitar right before the head. And spoiler alert, we do get that later in the album. But on this tune, I think it would have said something too, and it would have been a nice touch. Unfortunately, they do have some of that after the head is played, and they write it out a little bit as they also come down in volume and intensity. So let's check that out a little bit here together towards the end of this tune. Yeah, overall, great song, great moments there. We get an interesting, somewhat tricky melody, too, that features nice soloistic moments and subtly powerful accompaniment from the bass and drums with the hint, with that hint of social justice messaging that can be gathered from the title and the inspiration for this selection.
Yeah, I think this is a really cool track. And this kind of the rhythm section really stands out to me in the way that they are able to leave space and then build momentum like Max was talking about, and just really, really great work from the drums and the bassist on this track. It's a really cool track to start the album.
That's right. And then we get another sort of great great song with the second tune called Statistics, and this is more along the R&B realm of this album. Dwayne, what were you thinking with Statistics?
Yeah, this is a really cool track, and we kind of just take a little bit of a right-hand turn after listening to MB with Statistics. We get a really nice guitar intro and then a really nice vocal pickup from Braxton, and this is the first we're hearing his vocals on the album, and there's a lot to like. He has a great crooner voice, which is very smooth and very easy to listen to. And then I love how the bass comes in the first few bars on the verse. So he lets Braxton sing, the first 8 bars or so, and then comes in on the bass. And it's just a really nice feel that they've got going in the chorus, which is a super catchy, repetitive chorus. And just a really, really nice melody on this track. And then I love how the guitar comps over the second time through the chorus. Andrew Renfro does a great job just complimenting Braxton and his vocals. And then there's a really cool, nice vocal line at 126 that Braxton sings that I really like. And then when they get back into the chorus, I love the way that Braxton comps behind the chorus on the saxophone. And it just feels like this is kind of just a stream of consciousness and full expression here from Braxton. And then after that second chorus, we get into a sax solo. And there's just so much to love here from Braxton on the sax. He's truly a genre-bending master, right? He's singing on this R&B tune, and then he's going to take a sax solo. And I just love the R&B feel and the super rhythmic rhythm section here. And there's just really nice drumming throughout the solo as well, which I really like. We've mentioned the rhythm section, and we're just going to keep mentioning how they're able to kind of make the album move a lot with Braxton. So let's listen to a bit of that saxophone solo, and I want you to listen for those things. Listen to the R&B feel, the super rhythmic rhythm section, and listen to the way that the drummer interacts with Braxton while he's soloing. Yeah, I love that just really laid back R&B vibe there, Max. What do you think about just the feel, the vibe of this tune?
I'm still bobbing my head and swaying side to side. I love that feel, and there's a layering effect on that part too. And the way, I don't know specifically, but there's sort of a filter maybe on the sax, and it's sort of in the background, but it's still present. And everything is fitting in with each other, and not everybody does that. And so that's a great moment, and it's a killer groove.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. Yeah, Max brings that up about the sax, and it's kind of, he's comping over like the second chorus there. We didn't get to hear it, and he's kind of in the background for that, which makes sense. But then as he takes that solo, they don't like move him forward in the mix, and he sounds like he's still kind of distant, but it works super well on this track. But it is an interesting kind of technique that they're going for there. And then after that solo that we just heard, there's some really cool synth playing that takes over as the sax fades into the background. And I really love this track, and it really does say something. Some of the lyrics, it's just Braxton, it feels like he's really inquisitive in nature here. He's questioning society and his place in the world. And I think that he keeps asking why they want to talk about us. And so I think this track just does a really good job of giving us something that's musically deep and interesting, as well as having a real meaning and kind of setting up the journey of the album. He's questioning, like who am I and what is my place in all of this?
Yeah. And this is also just one of my favorite grooves. And like you said, it says something. It's cultural commentary at one point, asking questions. The sax solo is enticing. The vocal chorus line that says why they want to talk about us. I mean, that's stuck in my head. Yeah. So great job, Braxton. Great job. And then we get the third track called The Work / Journal Entry 1. And here we get one of the most interesting aspects to this record, where we get these interludes that are, placed more or less organizationally well, that he calls journal entries. And there's 4 of them. And they sort of are a mix of conversations he's had with his family members, his mom and dad predominantly, mixed in with some musical snippets that he's put together that incorporates a lot of different things. And each journal entry sort of uses different aspects of these musical creations differently. And so this one, called The Work, has a nice guitar and sax line accompanied by a verbal recording of, I believe, his mother. And they're discussing Braxton's passion and purpose. And it sort of has a similar groove to the tune we just heard, Statistics. And these journal entries are just so insightful into the familial influences on Braxton. And this is one of the most effective and inspirational ways to incorporate such interludes into an album.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think that these interludes, these kind of, conversations they had, just really give us an insight into, his conversations with his family and the way that he's processing all of these things he's dealing with in the album. And I think it's just a really cool way. It kind of ties the album together super well. And it just gives us so much perspective. And this short snippet seems to really start to explore the idea brought up in Statistics of like, who am I? What is my place? And he talks about the balance between being family focused and also exploring his passion, which is music for the most part. So yeah, just really seems to talk about balance and trying to figure that all out throughout life. So yeah, I really like this journal entry, and we're going to get more of them and kind of just keep getting to see where his mind's at throughout the album. So I think it's really cool. And then we get into the fourth track on the album, which is called 90s, featuring Masego. And this one is definitely the most recognizable single from the album. It's kind of the song that's broken into the mainstream the most, and it makes sense having Masego on it, and it has just a really great R&B vibe. And bringing in Masego is such a great choice, being such a great R&B artist. If you haven't checked out Masego's most recent album, also really good, so go check that out. And we just get a really nice groove set in by the bass and drums here, kind of more that hip-hop vibe, hip-hop R&B. And he just really explores the theme of love and says, love me like the 90s, which I interpret to mean kind of like that love that reminds him of a classic 90s black film, like not like things we see today. And I think it's some good social commentary here on how love is portrayed in the social media, and Braxton may be longing for a better representation of loving relationships like he remembers growing up in the 90s. So I think that's an interesting perspective from Braxton here. And then I love the musical turn that we take it at 2:10 in the song, 2 minutes and 10 seconds, into the second half of the song. And it's really simple in the rhythm section and vocally towards that second half, and there's some really awesome sax playing in the background that adds some really nice texture without necessarily being intended on being the focus. This second half just feels like the blissful feeling of love itself. So I want us to listen to kind of the end of the first half of the song going into that second half of the song, and kind of listen to that transition and get a feel for the groove and the vibe and everything we've got going on to the song. So let's listen to this snippet from 90s.
Black love, black love, I know. Black love, just love me like the 90s, babe. I know you love me. Those kisses so sweet, babe.
Max, what do you think about this tune and kind of that section there?
I loved the entrance of the sax. It snuck in, right? It's very sensitive, even though we get sort of that interesting, harder beat a little bit, and the heavy vocals and everything. Texturally, it works so well, and it just sort of opens up whatever came before that minute 50 seconds. And so it's just like it's like the bow of a present. So we're getting that bow with that saxophone entrance, and then everything is just gelling as it should, and it adds to the momentum of the end of the tune.
Yeah, I totally agree. This is just such a cool tune, and I think there's like a few different like remixes and stuff that are out there too, so definitely go check those out. I've checked some of them out, but I think they go in maybe a different direction in the second half of the tune in some of the remix, so definitely worth checking out different versions of the tune. But yeah, definitely just a cool, very much like R&B, kind of more pop R&B on this tune than maybe some of the other more like classic R&B tunes that we'll get into on the rest of the album.
And the ending is interesting. It includes some sort of crackling like you'd hear from a worn out record that can still play, but it has that crackle.
Nice.
So I just love
to it. Yeah.
I love that sort of LP element to that track.
Yeah.
So that's nice. And then we get the fifth track on the album called Indie, credited to Braxton as the composer. It's got a soothing melody in AABA form. Pay attention to the varying cymbal patterns from the drum set, in addition to the different grooves that the drummer will use. At one point during the sax solo, the drummer is simply doing the march-like snare drum beat, but then brings in the rest of the kit later on in the solo. There's some great moments from the drummer on this record and on this tune, Indie specifically. One of my favorite aspects to Indie is how the tail end of the head subtly and seamlessly enters into the saxophone solo section. And I want us to hear that together, just see if you can even spot where that transition happens.
Yeah, that's so seamless.
Yeah. Right. It just sort of happens. And you can tell it's sort of like right where that snare drum beat happens, where it's a little more march-like, and the rest of the texture kind of almost goes away, and then it'll come back. So you can kind of tell if you're really listening. But if you weren't paying attention, it just happens.
Yeah.
So I love that. And then repetition is also used quite a bit here during Braxton's solo ride. He also explores many parts of the range of his instrument, using more low notes and higher altissimo notes during the sax solo. Great syncopation. It seems like there's an effect on the sax too, used right before the guitar solo enters. And that guitar solo comes next, and it's sort of as if he's floating above the well-laid yet breathing foundation that is set by the rest of the rhythm section. Let's check that out together. Yeah, he's just floating above everything.
Yeah, it feels like he's almost in the clouds there.
That's right. We're in the clouds. And then we get a short piano solo, and then the sax and guitar re-enter. The band is playing the B section of this head when they come back, and they come in with more drive and energy, and I want us to listen to that too.
Such great dynamics. Another moment of just building there, and then you kind of hear him kind of pull back into the melody there.
It's all about dynamics, and listen and pay attention to what the drummer is doing during that section too. And they end with a repeat of the A section theme, and they come way down, as you were alluding to, as some final phrases played by Andrew Renfro with those guitar lines that are colored by reverb and delay, and it sort of shrinks to niente, aka shrinks to nothing. And so that's how this track ends. All in all, great playing, and it keeps you engaged with the music at a lot of moments during that tune called Indie.
Yeah, and I think this track really transitions well from the second half of 90s being kind of that more laid-back feel, and it's kind of a more laid-back jazz tune itself. And then I really love the melody on this tune and some of the doubling and the call and response from sax and guitar, from Andrew and from Braxton here. I think it's a really, really nice melody and really well played from those two guys.
That's right. Great playing. And then the sixth tune is called Faith, and this is journal entry number 2. So we're again one of those interludes again. And here's more talking, but it's a discussion between Braxton and his father. And there's a great melody on the sax that's being played too. And he also overdubs or redubs background saxophone parts, doing this sort of rhythmically based ostinato, and ostinato being a repeating pattern. Usually with just 4 or 5 or 6 notes. And so we get that here, and that's behind the alto sax soloing on top. I want us to listen to this moment together. It's a nice addition to this journal entry.
I think that's something that I really like a lot about these journal entries is they're not just interesting in like the conversations he's having, but there's like some musical thought put into it as well. You know, like you kind of get to hear him, and it almost sounds like he's just kind of like blowing over the journal entries, you know? So it's kind of just like, feels like he's just expressing himself in multiple ways really well here. And we're kind of just getting a full view into who Braxton is as a person.
Yeah, and I wonder if the conversation led him to create those lines, like those lines to him represent the topics that were discussed on the phone call with his dad. And this, you know, sort of faith or the value of faith made him think of those ideas or that phrasing. And it's sort of on the lighter side, right? Just overall, you get that feel where it's lighter. It's not that heavy.
Yeah.
It's got sort of this, I don't know, sort of all-encompassing spiritual effect from the mixing and mastering of whatever we're getting with those filters there on those horn parts. It's just very sort of moving and impactful, and it reminds me of what faith could mean to a person.
Yeah, and I think that's a great point. And it seems like, you know, that the music kind of fits what they're talking about well, as Max said, because Braxton kind of talks about how things in his life are starting to work out, and his dad talks about experiences of being a father. Seems like at this point in the album, like some of the questioning that Braxton was doing earlier in the album, like maybe he's starting to gain some clarity, and that's through faith and through family, which are two massive themes on this album. So that's kind of, we're getting that. It's not super serious. It's not super heavy here. It seems like that, you know, like, who am I? What is my point? You know, what does he say in Statistics? He says why they want to talk about us, you know, like why are other, you know, like, so I think he's starting to get the answers that he's looking for here, and it's kind of evident in this interlude.
Yeah, all great points. And after that second journal entry, we get a tune called Gold.
Yeah, and Gold is a really cool track. I like it. It's very unique on the album, and it's just way more of like a slow jam R&B, kind of more of a classic R&B feel that we are getting here. It reminds me of artists such as D'Angelo and kind of the late 90s and early 2000s R&B. So we get a much more stripped back tune here, mostly just featuring his vocals and guitar, and it's just really nice to hear Braxton's crooning, which is his style of singing, that soothing R&B vocal here. He has a really nice vibrato, really thoughtful and soulful approach to this track, and I just want us to take some time to listen to Braxton's vocal approach here on the tune Gold. So let's listen to part of the melody here on Gold, and just kind of listen to, just appreciate Braxton's voice, his soothing quality of his voice, and kind of that laid back R&B vibe.
Quarter to 5, you hit my line and started pressing me. You said it's time, I need to reply, so come get in line and just be here with me. 'Cause I need to try to spend some more time with the one that's right in front of me. And I need to spend more than 1 minute with the one that's right in front of me. It's all things that glitter don't mean that it's gold.
Really nice groove that we're setting into there as we get into the chorus, and just really nice sensitive bass playing, and nice from the rhythm section here. And they don't get like featured constantly, the rhythm section, but they're just make the album ever so interesting, and they make the album really move and breathe, which is nice. And vocally, the lyrics, we're getting more thoughts on love here, which is another theme of the album. The theme seems to be just not taking for granted the people that you love around you, and making time for those people and cherishing that time spent. So that's really what Braxton is getting at here. So it seems like he was questioning some things. He's got some clarity, and now he's really focusing on the things that are important to him. He's at this point newly married and about to have a son. So I think that he's really figuring himself out and getting his priorities straight. So a really cool track, and just really sensitive, laid back R&B tune. Max, what do you think about the tune Gold?
Yeah, sensitive definitely comes to mind, and I just want to say the tempo absolutely slays on this one. Just the ability to maintain that sort of slower feel. It's not quite a ballad tempo. It's not quite medium. It's somewhere in that nebulous.
It's that slow jam R&B,
yeah. So that's what got me, was the tempo. I love the guitar intro too, and there's a nice chord progression later in the song that really is great. So very sensitive and very crooner like. And when you and I interviewed Braxton Cook, he mentioned that he likes some crooners, and those are an influence on him. People with great voices that just sing great songs, and there's nothing frou-frou or extra about them. They just do music like music should be done. And I think that's part of what Braxton does.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. And this is just such an easy track to listen to, like on a Sunday morning if you're hanging out with, family or someone you love and cooking breakfast. That's just like the kind of track that you just put on and just feels great to listen to. So it's a cool tune. But let's keep moving forward on the album. The 8th track on the album is entitled The Same. Max, what did you think about this song?
Great song. It's credited to Andrew Moore and Braxton Cook. It features some vocals and some trumpet playing, specifically from the great Marquise Hill. The opening almost orchestral feel is a nice tease too before the drums and the vocals actually enter. And I want us to listen to this beginning opening because it's very different from anything else on this record.
Yeah, what a unique, we've not heard anything like that super orchestra production kind of thing yet.
Yeah, I wonder what the thought process was. It kind of works because
it works, yeah.
that it makes that drum groove really hit, and the vocals enter, everything enters like right together, and that's kind of a cool way to do it. It's sort of like a teaser. Like you won't be expecting this during that
exactly.
that first 10 seconds. So I thought that was a cool aspect to the same. This is a definite alternative R&B feel here. Great drum groove and interplay from the guitar and sax lines as they weave in and out of the vocal melody. The vocal melody is smooth and flowing and well mixed. Some background vocal harmonies are nicely woven in and out right before some moments of sax accompaniment is also used. The line, "Your love remains the same," is the central tagline. And we get Marquise Hill on that nice muted trumpet feature, and I want us to listen to some of that together. Awesome solo feature here from Marquise.
Yeah. Oh, man. I wonder if Miles Davis had an influence on jazz music and fusion.
I don't know, maybe. That muted trumpet might have something to do with it.
Yeah.
And then they sort of fade out with longer, lingering trumpet sounds. There's some final guitar notes and an almost digital-like synth sound, too. It seems almost like an old computer slowly powering down. Or maybe it's like you just lost a game of Frogger. And that's what we're getting at the end of this tune, the same. And let's listen to that moment together. See what you think of this sound.
You knew that Max was going to have, at some point, some imagery that you weren't expecting.
I'm getting Frogger. You just got ran over by the dump truck in Frogger, and this is the sound that you get.
Let's see if we can imagine it in our heads here.
Game over.
You make a good point on that one. That one, that is, and it's some super interesting like production techniques on this one. With the kind of orchestra intro and that kind of very synthy video game kind of outro there. Those are good points, Max.
It's interesting, and usually when those things are used, I don't dig it. But here, for some reason, they pulled things that spoke to my psyche. And it made a little bit more interesting. I maybe wouldn't have done the Frogger game over sound, but I definitely like that intro.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. And I think that a couple things that stand out to me on this track are kind of the layers of vocals here. And it sounds to me like Braxton is doing most all of the vocals. So singing the melodies and then kind of layering background vocals behind his melodies. And I really love the way that Braxton can use his vocal melodies as well as interweave his saxophone playing into different parts of the song, whether it's comping behind behind melodies or it's a true solo. He's so well-rounded, and just like all the expression we get from Braxton, constantly is really nice here on this song and on this album.
Absolutely. And then we get the probably most recognized song in terms of which tune is the most straight ahead or almost straight ahead. And that's this ninth track called Meters. And it's got a lot of doubling in the melody again with the saxophone and guitar playing that head together. And this is a moment where I appreciate the melodic construction of a tune. And so the form of the melody is made up of sets of 4-bar phrases. We have an opening 4-bar melody that's repeated, and you can think of that as an A section maybe. Then there's a different 4-bar idea, and then the opening idea one time. And then we get a different 8-bar section that's used sort of like a bridge. And then they go back to the first set of 4-bar phrases and keeping that same order. I would kind of consider it to be an A-B-A form at the macro level, where we have 16 measure A sections and an 8-bar bridge. Let's listen to the A section melody and the 8-bar bridge that I mentioned so we can hear that played out in action.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I love the way that melody's constructed, and we get an emphasis on rhythm and feel during the start of the saxophone solo that comes after the head. There's impeccable phrasing throughout the whole solo. Let's listen to that together. I know I'm getting you to listen to a lot of things here, but there's a lot in this track called Meters, and it's best to hear it for yourself, and then we can sort of talk about it.
Yeah. Man, I'll just say that Braxton is one of my favorite modern saxophone players to listen to. His feel, the rhythm, it's all just so good. It's so tasteful, and he's so unique. Like the way he plays is just, he's not playing, he's got some influences. You can tell there's some Kenny Garrett in there. There's some older cats. There's some bop, but he's just when it's him playing, it sounds so unique to me. And it's just so Braxton.
He is playing music. He is not rehashing laid out licks and ideas in a way that is just sort of automatic and robotic. He's fluid. And when you're going da 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 da, it's it has a rhythmic effect too, but it's also just connecting one idea to the next in an organic way. And of course, it's things he's practiced or thought about or ran through, fingerings and all that, but it still comes off as organic and then the moment and authentic and vulnerable. And not enough players are necessarily doing that right now, at least in this way, in this context, and it's super appreciated.
Yeah, and it's super cool how he just kind of brings his saxophone playing into the different elements of the album. We're kind of getting to hear it a little bit more in a traditional sense on this song. And I just love his range on the horn as well. When he's going up into kind of the higher range of the horn, it's just really nice there, and not afraid to kind of, let the tone alter a little bit as he gets higher in the altissimo on the saxophone there.
That's right. And then we get a guitar solo right after that. I believe he quotes most of what we know as the lick. Da-ba-doo-ba-da-da.
Yep, yeah. It's the full thing.
Yeah, that's it. The minute marker 2:54. And Andrew Renfro also has a great tone and flowy feel. Nice accompaniment from the drums and rhythm section too during that solo. Comping on piano does not get in the way at all. It's very sustained most of the time. So listen, pay attention to how Paul is comping behind that guitar solo. Very nicely done. Nice guitar fills on the head out too. We get some something I've sort of been begging for while checking out this record up until this point, and that is trading in fills and freedom from the saxophone and guitar, while there's a growing intense cymbal bashing aura from the drum set. Now, we got a moment of that earlier in the album, but here we're extending it and we're actually exploring ideas and playing off one another. And I want us to listen to that together. Pay attention to the interplay of the saxophone and the guitar. Yeah, I mean, it speaks for itself.
Yeah, it
But
really does.
they're listening to each other. They're almost copying each other at certain moments, but not always. And, sometimes they're more rhythmic, sometimes they're more all over the place. And the amount of time that is between one player and the next is not well defined. It's not as if they're just trading fours or trading twos specifically. They're organic and flowy with it. And it's like, here's a line, and then you can tag onto the tail end of it, and then I'll tag onto the tail end of yours, and maybe I'll put in a little bit of space so the drums come out here or there, and then I'll come back in and we'll listen to each other and see where it takes us. And that is the power of jazz.
Yeah, it feels like they're just really riffing off of each other,
Yeah.
which is it's really cool. And Max said it all on this one. I mean, I have notes, but Max covered all of it. I will say the rhythm section once again throughout Braxton's solo and through Andrew's solo, just really great momentum and drive and helping with the development of the solos and kind of the development of the tune as a whole. So continue to appreciate the rhythm section on this tune as well.
And I will say the fade out on this track works well because they're writing it out and they're giving us more than you would expect at the end of a tune. So I'm very happy with the way they ended this track.
Yeah, it doesn't feel lazy. It feels like we're getting more than we paid for here.
Right. And then we get 10th track, which is the third journal entry called Trust. And trust is the central theme expressed here. And he's sort of saying trust in God, trust the process of life. We are sort of on God's time frame. I think there's a mention of a Bible verse or two. The whole thing is less than a minute long, but it says a lot, and it works to set up the theme and idea behind the next tune on the album called Let Go.
Yeah, and I think that these journal entries they help Braxton navigate through the journey of the album and just help him weave through kind of the more modern jazz vibes and into the heavy R&B vibes so seamlessly. So they kind of just give us like, a little bit of a break in between the tunes before we transition, from something that's, super more modern jazz. And then we kind of just get an insight into what he's thinking. And then, all right, let's go in this kind of different direction here. So I think it does a really good job of setting up the next tune.
That's an excellent point, Dwayne. I didn't think of that, but you're right. It sort of aids in the transition from the more straight ahead or more modern jazz to the more R&B soul driven tunes. And it's like a pause, but it's an interesting pause that leads into a tune that's probably very different from the one before.
Yeah, and Braxton's so good. You could, if you were to tell someone you're going to do this, like, oh yeah, I'm going to make an album, but kind of half of it's way more jazz and half of it's really R&B, and I'm just going to go every track kind of back and forth. Someone might go, that might sound crazy, but like this is super well done, and I think that these interludes, these journal entries are a big, big factor in that.
Yeah. Yeah. And like I mentioned, this one also is a great transition to the very next tune called Let Go. And it's in the same theme because he's sort of saying, let go, let God. I enjoy these lyrics on the 11th track, Let Go. It's a shout out to his faith and understanding of how to deal with adversity. It's slower, but a powerful groove. And I love the chromatic movement we get later in the selection. Could we listen to that, Dwayne? Do you think we have time for that?
I think, yeah, let's do it, Max.
All right.
One thing that stands out to me, and I didn't write this down, it's just kind of as we're going through, all of the tracks are so different. Like there's so much R&B influence, but none of the R&B tracks sound like the other R&B tracks, right? They all have kind of their own individual flavor, right? Think of, we've got 90s, we've got Statistics, we've got Gold, and now this. They're all so different in a way, but also similar in how Braxton approaches the tunes and, what we're getting. But then you think about the jazz tunes. We've got MB, we've got indie, we've got meters up to this point, and those are all so different as well. MB's got this really kind of driving momentum, and then indie's more laid back, and then meters just this really kind of modern, kind of jazz tune. So it's really interesting.
That's a great point. It's also from a jazz musician's perspective, it's likely not the easiest thing to be able to pump out this varying degree of R&B grooves and feels and have it be interesting and constantly engaging and organic like this. And that's a great point. Yeah, I didn't really think about that.
Yeah, so it's just something to think about as you're going through the album, how it's all feels so good and meld so well together, but is all kind of different in its own way. But yeah, there's a fun groove section at the end of this track, Let Go, that I really like, and they just kind of let the groove ride out, and Braxton blows over it a bit, as well as some vocalizations that's going on. This is just a feel-good track. I really enjoy this track.
That's right. It feels good, and that should not be undervalued. And I'm appreciative of what Braxton is giving us on Let Go. And there's an interesting interlude right after called August Interlude. And I believe, according to you, Dwayne, August is Braxton Cook's son. Is that right?
Yep, who was born, I guess, at some point in making this album. So at some point he was born. He's, I guess, like probably about a year and a half or 2 years old now. So at some point in the creation of this album, he has his son, August.
Okay. Yeah. Another interesting thing to note about the influences on this album.
Yeah. And it makes sense with all of his dad talking about family, talking about raising children, to understand where Braxton's coming from and his new journey as a father here. So we kind of get a reference to that with August's interlude here.
And there's a lot of layering of saxophone on this interlude, August interlude. It's really worth checking out if you haven't. So yeah, some great moments in the interlude.
Yeah, and it's a nice kind of like almost like a very playful track, which would make sense for like his young son. Yeah, I love his playing and the multitude of saxophone lines going on here. A really cool track and a great interlude going into kind of a much more serious feeling tune, which is Black Mona Lisa. Max, what did you think about this tune?
Black Mona Lisa serves as the album's ballad. I'm pretty sure that's how I would describe it. And it's credited to Braxton and Andrew Moore. The melody starts off the track. It's a nice, soothing, but haunting melody that consists of eighth notes that move into a longer note. It's like an essential theme that repeats 8 times before a second part of the head begins with a different melody section, equipped with focus on long notes before the main original theme enters back in a couple of times. And then there's one long goose egg into the sax solo, aka one longer note. And if you see it on notation paper, it would kind of look like a goose egg in jazz font, so that's why we say goose egg sometimes. And Braxton is all over the horn during the solo, and I really dig it. He's using his range to his advantage, moments of nice lines in and out of his low end and going right up into the higher end of the horn. Moments of vibrato are also used. Don't forget to pay attention to the player's style. And what are they doing in addition to the notes that they're playing and the rhythms that they're playing? What would describe their style? Vibrato, different articulations, falls, doits, the list goes on. So pay attention to his style on this track during his solo. And the thing that spoke to me was the transition from the sax solo into the guitar solo. Braxton repeats this idea where he's playing a 16th note on the downbeat and moving into 8th notes from there. Let's check that out together. It's a great moment of solo transition.
Oh yeah, the drums there too is really nice, but almost, yeah, that is like passing the baton for sure. You know, it feels like there's almost holding on to it, and then they're both holding on to it for a second, and then Andrew takes over with the solo.
That's right. And you mentioned the drums. It grows in intensity too underneath that guitar, working to build drive, energy, and musical interest as the song moves along into different features too.
Yeah, and I think that there's really great repetition in this guitar solo, and like you said, the drummer is just not holding back during this guitar solo. We're really getting a lot of his influence in the solo there.
And I'm sure you're excited about, Dwayne, that we also get a piano solo.
Yeah.
And it's kind of nice too. A great chordal movement, repeated themes expressed here too, and more great drumming. Let's listen to the build and intensity expressed by the drummer during this piano solo and pay attention to how the pianist and the drummer are interacting with one another.
Man, that's really... We don't hear much of the piano get featured on this album, which I maybe wish that we got more of. But that's a really cool feature. There's really nice chromatic and kind of some modal playing there from Paul Cornish, and that's a really, really cool section. And like Max said, the interaction with the drummer, you can tell the drummer is locked in. He's listening to what Paul is playing there, and it's just super musical and super, super interesting to listen to.
Absolutely. And you could hear at the tail end of that snippet that Braxton Cook comes back in with that trill. And there's this sort of layering effect with background overdub saxophone to fill up the sound as it then comes down. And we end with a final chord and some lingering noise. All in all, ending a nicely played, nicely performed track. And that layering effect again comes out. And I think it's true that Braxton Cook has sort of some go-to ideas, but the way he utilizes them does not make it boring. And it continues to be interesting in how it's performed and how it's used. And I like that aspect to these tunes we're getting.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And it seems like, most players have their isms. You hear I hear Max play and I can hear the Max isms, and he has ideas that he goes to, and you hear that all the time. Like I hear it when I listen to Kenny Garrett, you hear it when you listen to Coltrane. So Braxton Cook definitely has those Braxton Cook isms, and that's how you kind of tell guys apart. I'll be listening, I'll be like, okay, that's a Coltrane-ism, like that's definitely Coltrane, or that's definitely Hank Mobley. So Braxton has that too, but is able to, it's not like he's just going back to the same ideas over and over again. He's able to mix in so many different ideas and take things in so many different directions. And I love this track a lot. I think it's got a lot of weight and energy, which I really get captivated by at this point in the album. It's a very moving track. It kind of just really draws you in, and you're really fully attentive on what's going on.
Yeah, absolutely. And then we get the 14th track called The Answer. What is the answer to? What's the question? Do you have any idea?
Well, it seems like, we're just kind of on a journey on this album, and it's like there's times where, he's questioning things, right? And then he's starting to get some clarity. But then this, this Black Mona Lisa is like, all right, this is a serious, like what's going on here? And then the answer kind of just brings some stuff back up, and we get a really nice intro with the sax and the guitar. And I like how he ties the vocal melody into the sax melody from the intro at the beginning of the song. He says, I don't know why, and he's questioning different things he seems to be struggling with, his reactivity, his passion. Is he moving backwards? So I love the vulnerability here from Braxton. It seems like, maybe even though he had reached some clarity, there are things that might be he's still questioning. He still doesn't have the answer to. And it's just a really great message that even when things are seem to be going well or on the up, as it seems like we were at the point of the journey in the album, that there are going to be times where you struggle or you question things, whether it's stress or mental health or adversity. And I think this really begs the question of the title of the album, who are you when no one is watching, to Braxton. And Braxton says in this song to that, I'll give my everything. So it's, he's dealing with things, even when times seem great, he's still got things he's dealing with, but he's willing to put in the effort and the passion to get through things. And we get a really nice spoken word feature here from Orlando, not Washington. What's his last name? Orlando Watson. I don't know. I wrote Washington, and I knew that wasn't right. Orlando Watson, who actually passed away in 2022. after battling cancer. So a really cool spoken word feature, talks a bit about the struggles of COVID and social justice and policing issues around that same time. Also talks about activism and about wanting change but not finding himself doing much more than sitting behind his keyboard. And I think that's a really interesting point, and there's some great social justice points made in this album. It's kind of an undertone of the album, but we do get it at times. And I think that's a great point. You know, maybe people will advocate for causes and will make social media posts about things, but are they really dedicating any of their time or resources to that cause? So I think that's a good introspective thing to look at. Like, okay, I'm passionate about this thing. How much am I actually putting into it? You know, more so than just going on social media and posting about it. How much are you willing to invest in what you're passionate about? So a really cool spoken word feature from Orlando Watson here. And just a really, you know, another tune with a message here on The Answer.
Yeah, there's also multiple sax parts at the top of the tune that's really nice. And some moments of call and response between the vocal line and the sax line that you'll hear towards the beginning of the tune with the lyrics, I don't know why. And I don't know why is so relatable because you go through life asking these questions. And that's a moment here where Braxton Cook is vulnerable and relatable. And that's excellent as a musician of this caliber with an album like this, where he's giving it his all, and we get to see through the lens that is Braxton Cook a little bit.
Yeah, for sure. And yeah, and it says the answer is the title, but maybe sometimes you don't have all of the answers, and that's gonna happen. So yeah, a cool track, a cool feature, and it leads us into the final journal entry on the album, which is entitled Parenthood, journal entry number 4. And we just get more thoughts on family here and Braxton as a new father. So yeah, this is another cool journal entry. What do you think about the last one here, Max?
It shows his love for family, and it expresses thoughts from his dad applauding Braxton for his love of family. And I think that sort of validation is key to a successful entrepreneur, successful musician like Braxton, and somebody that's really trying to do something that is a reflection of themselves. We tend to see that is validated by his folks.
Yeah, for sure. And you feel this sense of pride from his father as we go through these journal entries. And, his father we talked to Braxton, was a law professor at Georgetown, and Braxton felt some pressure to go to Georgetown, went to Georgetown, and was studying, African American studies and literature, something, along those lines. And he felt this pressure, but then decided to pursue his passion in music, and his dad seems so supportive of him, just being passionate about something and just being driven. So it's really nice to hear these journal entries and hear his dad speak and hear how proud his dad sounds of him, both as a musician, as a person, and as a father and as a family man. So just a really cool interlude to tie that all together.
Yeah, and that's the last journal entry. And then we get the last full song called Serene. And this is credited to Joshua Crumbly on bass, the guitarist Andrew Renfro, and of course Braxton. It's a catchy melody. It's got a 4-bar melody repeated 4 times, then another 4-bar idea repeated 4 times, and then another longer note theme played twice before the first theme enters back in 2 times to end the form. All in all, we sort of get this A-B-C-A prime form. And there seems to be quite a bit of freedom in this selection, with Braxton venturing out more with his solo here. I also appreciate the decluttered sonic landscape. Let's listen to that together.
Yeah.
Right. It's full on pretty much acoustic and just let the instruments breathe and interact with one another. That's a nice moment. We also get a guitar solo, and then finally a bass solo on the acoustic bass. I really like the bass solo on this one. The bass solo sort of really solidifies this feeling of serenity and of being serene. So let's listen to some bass on this one. Yeah. I saw you close your eyes there, Dwayne. What were you feeling?
Yeah, it's serenity, right? Like it's so
right.
Like I don't know. Yeah, it's so relaxing. And I think that that's really what Braxton's going for. This sense of peace, this sense of, we've reached some peace and serenity in the journey after all of the questions we asked earlier, the adversity that's been answered through Braxton's love for his family and his faith and his passions, both musically and socially as well. It seems like we've reached this point where we're at peace with everything.
Yeah, very peaceful. And he's using a lot of, one note ideas.
Yep.
A lot of repetition. It's solidifying that serenity feeling. And then we get the very last track, which is called Epilogue. And this is a really short, not interlude because it's not in between anything. It's an epilogue, and It's called Epilogue. And we end with a discussion between, quote, Brax and his dad. His dad refers to Braxton on the phone on the recording as Brax.
Yep.
And that's a neat thing. And then they're talking about the weather. And they go into like a cool multi-layered saxophone melody, reminiscent of the lines over the first journal entry, Faith, or one of the first journal entries. I wonder if he uses parts of an extended track he created and he put snippets of it into some of these journal entries or interludes. I'm not sure how he constructed that, but it reminded me a little bit of some previous musical examples used in other journal entries. And I think it's hilarious to end with this idea of talking about the weather. And it's like, we're just going through life and we're going to keep on going. And yes, the album's ending, but it doesn't mean it's the end. We still got to experience life and get the weather update and what's the news and what am I going to wear and what do I have to get at the grocery store? And did I get my stamps today? And then, oh no, we're out of dog food. And that's where we're ending.
Yeah. Are you sure that he's talking about the weather?
I thought I heard him mention something about the weather.
We should listen to it because I think he just says today is a great day on the back of another great day. Let's listen to it because I'm not sure what he's referencing. Let's take a listen to it.
I thought he was commenting on the weather. Maybe that's my bad.
Let's listen because I don't know. I didn't pick up on that.
Let's check it out.
Yo, what's up, Brax?
What up, Dad? How you doing, man?
I'm doing all right, my man. Doing all right. You?
That's good. Yeah, I'm great. Today's a nice day. Off the back of another nice day. Yesterday was great.
Oh man, nice marvelous LA, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think he's saying a nice day in reference to how he's feeling.
I thought it was a nice day, like it's
nice
a
day
nice
outside.
day out. Yeah.
No, I think he's talking today was a nice day, like it was a good day, and yesterday it was a good day.
I guess you're right. That makes more sense. But I
That's funny.
I just thought about it like, okay, we're just talking about, life as it keeps going. And that's why it's there at the end of the album. I think you're right. It's just another good day on top of another good day because life is good and we should appreciate and be grateful for what we have. I guess I heard it like, oh, it's nice outside. It's a nice day today.
Yeah, I think, and after that, he's like, oh, today's a nice day on the back of another nice day, kind of talking about life and everything's going well. And they kind of, after that, he said, well, there's a couple little things, but then he like seems to brush those things off, right? So I think he's kind of just reached this point in his life where he's just, everything's good and those small things aren't really bothering him. So I think this just kind of, shows the kind of point where he's at. And like Max said, just kind of going, it was a nice day and we're going through life and everything keeps going. And, he's dealt with all the things he had to deal with. And the weather's probably nice outside too.
I blew it. I
That's
thought he was talking. I thought he was just saying it's nice out.
I
'cause
thought I missed something. I was like, wait, what is he talking about?
I just took it wrong.
No,
But,
yeah, I get why you
'cause-
think that.
because he's in California, right?
Yeah, I think he's in LA.
So I thought he was just saying it's a nice day outside, like almost every day in Southern California.
Yeah, yeah. But yeah, so I think this song just does a great job to solidify kind of what we were saying in Serenity. You know, today was a nice day. On the back of another nice day, he's really just got this positive outlook, and what a powerful journey and vulnerable ride that we've gone on with Braxton. And Max, one thing that's crazy about this album that I realized, like when I was doing my overall thoughts, the album is less than an hour long.
It doesn't feel like that.
I mean, it's 17 tracks long. We go in so many different directions. The album is like 59 minutes long.
I didn't realize that. It kind of makes sense because most of the, at least R&B songs, are less than 4 minutes.
Yeah.
So that's a contributing factor. And then these interludes are what, 1 to 2 minutes?
Yeah, but it just feels so much. Feels like this like long journey that we've gone. It feels like we've gone on like a 3-year journey with Braxton, but he managed to do it all in an hour and just such a succinct way. And we also kind of talked about how all the songs are so different, but fit so well in the journey. And I think that it's pretty masterful that he can do all of that in under an hour of runtime. I think that that's pretty awesome.
It's remarkable.
Yeah.
It's a testament to his vision and what it goes into portraying that vision in a way that's accessible and ready to be, to be encapsulated by the listener.
Yeah, for sure. And it's easy to get drawn in. But let's talk about our top threes and our not so hot track for this album. I'll go first, Max, on this one. I'll let you go first on the overall thoughts. And so my top three, my number one track, I think it's just kind of the one that's able to break into the mainstream the most and has a great message and kind of ties in, the R&B and the jazz really well. I really like 90s. I think it's just a great tune and kind of the hit single from the album. So I'll give it the number one track for that reason. And then my number two track is going to be Meters, like a very, very much just the jazz feature. When I think about the jazzy, more jazz focused tracks on the album, Meters is the first one that comes to mind. I really like MB as well. That one really comes to mind. But Meters is the one that sets itself apart the most. The solos are great on that one. And the rhythm section's fantastic on Meters. And then my third track, which was really hard. This top three was not easy. I kind of kept going back and forth between things. And the third track is probably just the track that I just like listening to the most out of the ones that I was kind of in between, and that's Statistics. It's just really easy to listen to, got a great groove, really great saxophone playing, really nice melody. The Why They Want to Talk About Us, that's just such a catchy melody. So I put Statistics as my number three, but it could have gone in so many. Gold was one that I really wanted to put there because it's just such a nice laid back, stripped back, slow jam R&B tune. But I went with Statistics as my number three. And we're actually going to do something different that we've wanted to do before, but we've never done. I don't think it makes any sense on this album, given the journey of the album and how every song fits into the journey and Braxton's experiences. I think it would almost be rude and disrespectful to have a Not So Hot on this album, so I'm not going to pick one. I don't think there's any point in picking one. The way that he curated the album and all the songs on it, if you take anything out, we're missing part of the journey, so I'm not doing it.
Also, everything accomplishes what it was set out to accomplish.
Yes.
And usually with a not so hot track, it's sort of like
Misses
where we
the
know
mark. Yeah.
it's missing the mark, or it's close, or there's something that made it sound worse, but with this album, there really isn't that not so hot track.
Yeah, no, I mean, I tried to think of different things and I'm like, I look at the interludes and I'm like, there's no reason. Those all give such good perspective. It wouldn't make sense.
Yeah. So my top threes are a little different. My number one is Meters, which is the most almost modern straight ahead with great saxophone soloing. My number two is the ballad on the album, Black Mona Lisa. Number 3 was your number 1, 90s. I thought that Feel and Masego was great. Everything about that tune is catchy. I do have some honorable mentions. I mean, I think Statistics is well worth being in the top 3. I feel like with this album in particular, you could line up 5 or 6 musicians and give them a pen and paper and say, write down your top 3 favorite tracks from this album, and they would all be different.
Yeah, yeah. And I think it's probably has something to do with people's, because, there's so much and so many different feels on this album. So like, I feel that it has something to do with it, and people are going to resonate with them more personally, different songs, with different people. And that just is a testament to how great this album is.
Yeah. Yeah. A couple others I really liked were Serene and The Same, featuring Marquise Hill on trumpet. And so those are definitely my favorites. Top 3 being Meters, Black Mona Lisa, and 90s. So that rounds out the top 3s.
Yeah, and Max also, no, Not So Hot. We mentioned Why Not. All right, well, I'll go first on the.
You said I was.
I know, but you got more to say, so I'm gonna let you go last. I'm gonna let you wrap it up. How's that sound?
I got my term paper ready for you.
Yeah. I don't want to. Yeah, if you go first, I'll just look bad. So I'll let you go first. My overall thoughts and my rating for the album. Who are you when no one is watching begs exactly that question, and the outstanding Braxton Cook takes us on his personal journey to answer just that question. Braxton really comes into his own with this genre-fusing album that not only brings phenomenal music but also a message. Braxton's message is evident through powerful R&B tracks such as Statistics, 90s, Gold, and The Same. These tracks, although heavily steeped in R&B, all bring something different to the table and bring out different elements of both Braxton's vocals and his playing. His ability to fuse R&B and jazz is so seamless, and he does it in a way that feels so personal to him. The way that he is able to take us on his self-discovering journey while weaving through the powerful R&B tunes and the more modern jazz selections is pure mastery. The balance between the two is near perfection. The R&B tunes almost always have his sax playing to comp with his singing or taking a solo, and the jazz tunes still have those modern fusion rhythms and elements. The more straight-ahead jazz tunes such as MB, Indie, Meters, and Serenity showcase Braxton's abilities as a jazz composer and a player in such a fresh and unique way. His playing is so unique and always in the pocket. And he is such a joy to listen to. I love the intensity that the record brings from the get-go with MB, with a rhythm section that's just locked in and ready to go. Guitarist Andrew Renfro gives us a taste of how much of a heavy contributor he is going to be on the album, starting out with the opener. His tone fits the landscape of the album so well, and we get many great guitar solos from him throughout. His doubling on the melody of Meters is spot on, and his solo is even more so. That the phrasing, the rhythm, and the lines, while all being driven forward by the rhythm section, is just really nice on Meters. The band really shows their chops on this selection with the great melody, solos, and an awesome trading section between Braxton and Andrew. The thing that makes this album stand above other recent releases in the jazz landscape is how well it's curated and the story that it tells. This album is truly a lens into Braxton's experiences at this point in his life. It takes us through a journey of self-exploration and takes us through a few ups and downs along the way. The album also explores Braxton's influences musically in such a succinct way and such an interesting way. The melting of jazz and R&B is never forced and is a delight to the listener's ear. The album is much more than a collection of songs. It's a musical journey that Braxton is vulnerable enough to let us on with him, and that deserves immense praise. This one is a must listen, and not just as background music. Start from the top and clear your calendar for an hour. And for that reason, I give it an 8.9 out of 10. Really phenomenal album.
Yeah, great points. I would also say Braxton Cook is one of those cats that will continue to surprise you. He's got a lot of influences and a wide range of abilities. This record succeeds in showcasing the best of all sides of Braxton Cook. We get a number of tunes that come from his soulful R&B side, complete with him on vocals in addition to his saxophone. It's also appreciated that he has a killer lineup of band members and special guests, including Masego on 90s and trumpeter Marquise Hill on The Same. Mr. Cook's Straight Ahead Foundation comes out on Meters, Serene, and Black Mona Lisa, which serves as the ballad on the album. Another neat aspect present in this album is the inclusion of 4 interludes labeled as journal entries. These include moments of dialogue between Braxton and his mom and dad, giving us a glimpse into Braxton Cook, the human being. He seems to appreciate his family immensely, while also letting us know what values have been instilled in him with the titles of these interludes, using names such as The Work, Faith, and Trust, while the last one called Parenthood. The dialogue of these interludes took place during the onset of the COVID pandemic. It's a window into Braxton's artistry and value meter. On that note, we also have as the album opener a song called MB for Micaiah Bryant, alluding to the tragic death of 16-year-old Micaiah Bryant at the hands of Columbus police. Yet another statement is made here with the song's melodic composition and soloing. Braxton has got some things to say, and he utilizes many techniques and practices to impactfully express himself. Mr. Cook's R&B inclinations are well expressed on Statistics, 90s, Gold, and Let Go. Great chord progressions, grooves, and catchy yet meaningful lyrics are included in all of them. Drummers Jonathan Pinson and Curtis Noasad add so much to these grooves and help build intensity underneath solos. Their contributions are well noted on almost all tunes, including the selections that lean more acoustic and straight ahead. In fact, these rhythm section players accompany the leader tremendously. Guitarist Andrew Renfro often doubles the album's saxophone melodies, working to beef up the sound of the lead line. Renfro also shines with his solos on Indie, Serene, and Meters. The tune Meters also contains a well-constructed melody, impeccable solo phrasing, and nice interplay between the sax and guitar towards the end of the track. Tunes like Let Go are on the shorter side, while still delivering powerful grooves and a distinct message. Another highlight is the tune 90s. The almost Dilla beat or hip-hop feel is pulled off nicely, accompanied by great lyrics and texturally pleasing saxophone. Be sure to catch Joshua Crumbly's bass solo on Serene too, as it emphatically hits home that serenity feeling. August's interlude sounds playful, lighter, and slightly wispy, effectively portraying his youngest son, August. All in all, Braxton Cook's Who Are You When No One Is Watching is a powerful recording. Every track says something, which is a testament to the mind and drive of Mr. Cook. The collaborative elements on the album demonstrate the effectiveness of Cook's leadership and musicianship. The numerous odes to his family is extremely refreshing. In all honesty, it took me a minute to really grasp this album, but once I did, I thoroughly enjoyed it. The grooves, lyrics, and varying musical elements that make up the record sound are intriguing. Cook's saxophone playing is on point, while the moments where he adds in extra sax parts to certain tunes really caught my ear. Most everyone should check this one out. There's no way you'll be disappointed. My overall score, 8.6 out of 10.
Yeah, Max, and you make all the great points there, and I think that, it really is an album that'll grow on you. At first listen, I mean, it sounds great, but then that's why I said you really got to sit down and listen through this album because it really does give a lot. So our overall Jazz Jam score on this one is going to be 8.8 out of 10. And one cool thing, if you like how we rate the albums out of 10, you should go to our power rankings list, which is on our website, which you can find in the description of the show wherever you're listening. And our website's really cool. That power rankings list is awesome. It has a list of every single episode, every single album that we've done in order of how we ranked them. So if you're looking to see kind of where things stack up, definitely go check that out. Our website has some other cool features. You can send us a message on there if you want to chat with us, as well as follow us on Instagram and DM us there if you have any criticism, any feedback, any albums that you'd like us to check out, or anything you'd like us to check out in general. Our next episode, we're going back to a classic jazz album and going kind of in a different direction that we've gone in lately. We're going to be doing an album from 1960 by Bill Evans Trio, which is Portrait in Jazz. So definitely excited to get into this one. I don't think I've listened to this album all the way through. I know I've heard tracks from it and maybe heard the whole thing, but not all the way through from start to finish. So I'm excited to get into this one. What do you think, Max?
I too have listened to tracks on this record, but maybe not all the way through. So it'll be interesting. And the lineup on this record is basically the Bill Evans Trio with Scott LaFaro and Paul Motion.
Yep.
So it's a moment of jazz history we have to discuss and get into. And it was in due time. There's many others we're going to get into soon as well that we're looking forward to. I won't say anything more than that, but
Yep.
there's a lot we've sort of hashed out of what we're going to get into. And so we're starting with some Bill Evans Trio on the next episode, and we'll see where we go from there.
Yeah, super excited, looking forward. We got a lot of great stuff coming. Definitely follow us on Instagram. Go check out our website, and just thanks everyone for listening. This has been an awesome episode. I want to remind you, go back and listen to our interview with Braxton if you haven't after listening to this episode. It's a really awesome interview, so definitely go check that out. But yeah, anything else, Max, or you ready to wrap this one up?
I'm ready to wrap it up. I just wish everyone out there to keep swinging and keep listening.
Awesome. Yeah. Well, this has been an episode of the Jazz Jam Podcast. Thanks for listening. We'll see you next time.
My sweet and chocolate lovey, I'll miss the way you love me. Just love me like the 90s, oh baby. You put your dreams to the side.